I sat there in the courtroom, the air thick with tension, my hands resting on the wooden table in front of me, feeling every scratch and groove under my fingertips. Across from me was Camila, my soon-to-be ex-wife, her perfectly styled hair and sharp gray suit making her look like she'd already won. Next to her, Griffin Leary, her lawyer, leaned back his chair with that smug grin plastered across his face, like he was enjoying every second of my downfall. The divorce hearing had dragged on for hours, and now we were at the end, the part where they divide up our lives like it was some garage sale. Griffin's voice cut through the room, sharp and mocking. "Enjoy your new life. You'll be leaving with nothing," he said, his eyes glinting with victory. Camila did not even look at me when she spoke, her words cold and quick. "You should have been a better husband." I felt my heart slam against my chest, a hot rush of anger mixing with something heavier. Regret. Maybe you're just plain hurt. But I did not let it show. I kept my face steady, my jaw tight, my eyes locked on the judge's weathered hands as he shuffled papers in front of him. The judge, a tired-looking man with gray hair and a voice like gravel, turned to me. "Mr. Rodas, do you have any final words before I make my ruling?" he asked, peering over his glasses. The room went quiet, and I could feel Camila and Griffin watching me, waiting for me to crumble, to beg, to say something weak. But I did not. Instead, I felt a small, strange calm settle over me, like the moment before a storm hits. I reached into my briefcase, my fingers brushing against the thick folder I'd spent months putting together. "Actually, yes," I said, my voice steady as I slid it across the table toward him. "I'd like to submit this as evidence." The judge raised an eyebrow, curious, and took it from me. Camila's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing, but I did not look at her. Not yet. I wanted to see her face when the truth hit. The judge opened the folder, his fingers flipping through the pages one by one. I knew what he was seeing. Every receipt, every email, every bank statement I dug up like buried treasure. My hand stayed clasped in front of me, but inside, my mind was racing. This was not just about the divorce anymore. This was about everything she'd taken from me, everything she thought I'd let her get away with. The silence stretched on, and I risked a glance at Camila. Her smirk was gone. Her face had gone pale, like the blood had drained right out of her. Griffin shifted in his seat, his fingers tapping nervously on the table, his confidence cracking. "What is this?" he muttered under his breath, but I did not answer. I did not need to. The judge's eyes flicked up to me, then back to the papers, and I could tell he was starting to understand. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment sink in. For months, I'd been the quiet one, the guy who did not fight back, the husband who let her walk all over him. But not today. Today I was the one with the upper hand, and it felt good, better than I'd expected. Camila's voice broke the silence, sharp and shaky. "What did you do?" she hissed, leaning toward me, her eyes wide with something I had not seen in her before, fear. I did not answer right away. I just smiled, a small, tight smile, and turned my attention back to the judge. He cleared his throat, setting the folder down, and looked at Camila's side of the room. "Counselor, Ms. Rodas," he said, his tone heavy, "we're going to need to discuss this further." My heart was still pounding, but now it was not anger driving it. It was satisfaction. I played my card, and the game was about to change. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as the judge called for a recess, and I watched Camila and Griffin huddle together, their heads bent low, their voices sharp and fast. She shot me a look, half rage, half panic, and I met her gaze without flinching. 12 years of marriage, and it had come to this. Me with a folder full of her secrets, her with nothing but a lawyer who was starting to sweat. I did not know what the judge would decide, not yet. But I knew one thing for sure. Camila was not laughing anymore. And that was enough for now. I stood up as the bailiff motioned for us to leave the room, my folder still sitting on the judge's bench like a ticking bomb. This was not the end, not even close, but it was a start. A damn good one. I walked out of the courtroom, my step steady, my head high, feeling lighter than I had in years. Whatever came next, I was ready. I woke up that morning expecting the usual coffee brewing in the kitchen, the soft hum of the house waking up, maybe a quiet hour to myself before the day started. The bedroom was still dark, the curtains drawn tight, and the clock on my nightstand blinked 6:45 in red digits. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the weight of another restless night, and swung my legs out of bed. Camila was already up, which was not unusual. She had always been the early riser, the one with energy I could never match. I shuffled into the kitchen, my bare feet cold against the tile, and saw her standing by the counter. She was not making coffee, though. She was holding a manila envelope, her fingers tapping against it absently, her eyes glued to her phone. "Morning," I mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot, but she did not look up. Instead, she slid the envelope across the counter toward me, her voice casual, like she was telling me about the weather. "I've spoken to my lawyer," she said. "This should be simple." I froze, my hand hovering over the pot, the words sinking in slow and heavy. 12 years we'd been married. 12 years of me standing by her, building a life together, and this was how it ended. I picked up the envelope, my fingers fumbling with the clasp, and pulled out the papers inside. Divorce papers. Her signature was already there, neat and sharp, like she'd signed a business contract. My eyes scanned the pages, the legal words blurring together. But one thing stood out clear as day. I was getting nothing. No house, no money, no piece of the business I'd helped her build. Zero. I looked up at her, waiting for something, an explanation, an apology, anything. But she just kept scrolling on her phone, her face blank. "Camila," I said, my voice rough. "What is this?" She finally glanced at me, her eyes cool and distant. "It's over," she said. "You knew this was coming." Did I? I stood there, the papers shaking in my hands, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. I did not know how long I stared at her, trying to make sense of it. She did not even flinch, just went back to her phone like I was not there. I'd spent years supporting her, pouring myself into Rotis Interiors, her design company. I was not the flashy one. Sure, I did not stand in front of clients or schmooze at parties, but I was the backbone. I'd handled the boring stuff, the admin work, the accounting, the endless emails and schedules. I'd stayed up late balancing her books when she was too tired, planned her events when she was too busy, all without a paycheck or a thank you. And now she was tossing me out like I'd been some hired help she did not need anymore. "After everything," I said, my voice low, "this is what I get." She sighed, setting her phone down, and looked at me like I was a kid who did not get it. "You did not keep up," she said. "I grew. You didn't." The words hit me like a punch, and I felt something inside me snap. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet break, like a string pulled too tight. I walked out of the kitchen, the papers still in my hand, and sat on the couch in the living room. The house was quiet, too quiet, and I could hear her moving around behind me, getting ready for her day like nothing had happened. I flipped through the pages again, reading every line, every cold, calculated detail. She wanted the house we'd bought together, the one I'd fixed up with my own hands. New paint, new floors, every leaky faucet replaced. She wanted the business, all of it, even though I'd been there from day one, back when it was just an idea scribbled on a napkin. No alimony, no equity, no nothing, just a clean break for her and a big empty nothing for me. My chest tightened, and I clenched my jaw, trying to keep the anger from spilling out. I wanted to yell, to throw the papers in her face, to demand she explain how she could do this, but I did not. I just sat there, breathing hard, letting it sink in. By the time she left for work, her heels clicking against the floor as she grabbed her bag and walked out, I was still on the couch. The door slammed shut, and the silence swallowed me whole. I looked around the room, the framed photos of us, the furniture we'd picked out together, the life we'd built, and it hit me. She'd planned this. She had been steps ahead, plotting this casual goodbye while I was still playing the loyal husband. I dropped the papers on the coffee table and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I could have begged her to stay, could have fought right then and there, But what was the point? She had made up her mind, and I was not in it anymore. But as the minutes ticked by, something else started growing inside me. Not just hurt, not just anger, but a spark of something harder, something sharper. I was not going to let her walk away with everything. Not like this. I did not know how yet, but I'd find a way to fight back. That morning, when she handed me those papers, she thought she'd ended it. She did not know she'd just started something bigger. I was not always the guy sitting quietly in the background, letting life happen around me. I used to be more than that. And that morning, after Camila dropped the divorce papers on me, I could not stop thinking about how it all started. I sat in the living room, the same spot where I'd stared at those papers, but now my mind was drifting back to the early days, back when Camila and I were a team. The house was still quiet, the kind of quiet that presses down on you, and I could almost hear the echoes of how things used to be. I'd been her biggest cheerleader when she started Rotis Interiors, back when it was just the two of us in a cramped apartment, her sketching designs on cheap graph paper while I built her first portfolio website from scratch. I was not a tech genius, but I figured it out. Hours of trial and error, late nights with bad coffee, just so she could show her work to the world. She'd smiled at me then, her eyes bright, saying, "We're going to make it big, you and me." I believed her. I believed in us. Those first years, I was everywhere she needed me to be. I'd cold call potential clients, my voice shaky but determined, setting up meetings for her to pitch her ideas. I'd shake hands at networking events, my tie crooked and my palms sweaty, while she worked the room like she was born for it. People started noticing her talent, her charm, and soon the clients rolled in. I was proud, even if I stayed in the shadows. I did not mind being the quiet one. I liked building something with her. When she threw her first big business mixer, I was the guy behind the bar pouring drinks, smiling at her guests, making sure everyone had a good time. No one remembered my name, but I did not care. Camila was shining, and that was enough. I built half of that business with her, even if my name was not on the logo, the website, the client lists, the late-night brainstorming sessions. It was ours, or so I thought. Now, sitting there with the divorce papers staring back at me, I realized how much I'd given and how little she'd ever given back. The house felt emptier than ever, every corner reminding me of what I'd poured into it. I'd fixed the creaky stairs, painted the walls that soft blue she loved, spent weekends planting the garden she always wanted, and Rotis Interiors. I'd been the one tracking expenses when she forgot, chasing down payments from slow clients, keeping the books balanced so she could focus on designing. I never asked for credit, never demanded a title. I just did it because I loved her, because I believed in her dream. But she'd taken it all and made it hers, like I'd never existed. The anger was still there, simmering under my skin, but it was not just anger anymore. It was clarity. I knew that business inside and out, better than she thought I did. That was my edge, and I was going to use it. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over a name I had not called in years, Zaire. He had been a friend back in college, a guy who always had my back. Now he was a paralegal at some small firm downtown. I hit call, my heart picking up as it rang. "Hey man," he answered, his voice warm but surprised. "Been a while." I did not waste time with small talk. "I need your help," I said, keeping it simple. "Camila is trying to take everything, divorce stuff. I've got some ideas, but I need someone who knows the legal side." He did not hesitate. "Say no more. Meet me tomorrow. Coffee shop on 5th. We'll figure it out." I thanked him, feeling a small weight lift, and then dialed another number. Noah, a freelance tech guy I'd met at one of Camila's events. He was quiet like me, but sharp, the kind of guy who could dig into anything digital. "Noah," I said when he picked up, "I need you to track some stuff. Old files, accounts, passwords. Can you do it?" He laughed, a short, dry sound. "If it's online, I can find it. Send me what you've got." That afternoon, I started pulling things together. I rummaged through the home office, her office technically, where I'd spent countless hours working for free. Old laptops, stacks of papers, a USB drive she'd forgotten about. She had always been careless with the details, leaving me to clean up the mess. And now that was going to bite her. I found backups of early business files, client lists I'd typed up, even some login info scribbled on sticky notes she'd tossed aside. My hand shook a little as I plugged in a dusty drive and watched the screen light up with folders. Years of data she thought I'd never touch. I did not know exactly what I was looking for yet, but I knew there was something. She'd gotten sloppy over the years, too confident, and I'd been too loyal to notice. Not anymore. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, I had a plan taking shape. Zaire would help me figure out what was legal, what I could use. Noah would dig deeper, crack into accounts she'd locked me out of. And me? I'd piece it all together. Every quiet contribution I'd made, every hour I'd spent building her empire. The house creaked around me, and I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. Camila thought she'd left me with nothing, but she did not know what I was capable of. Not yet. I was not the silent husband anymore. I was the guy who had built half her world, and I was about to remind her of that, one file at a time. The nights started blending together after that morning with the divorce papers. Each one stretched out long and restless as I sat alone in the house, digging through the past. The living room had become my war room. Papers scattered across the coffee table, my laptop glowing in the dark, a half-empty mug of cold coffee sitting forgotten by my side. I'd always been the organized one, the guy who kept track of details Camila ignored, and now that was my weapon. I started small, pulling up old files from the USB drives I'd found, flipping through stacks of receipts she'd shoved into drawers years ago. At first, it was just a mess, random numbers, scribbled notes, invoices that did not add up. But the more I looked, the more I saw patterns she'd never bothered to hide. My eyes burned from the screen's glare, but I could not stop. Every click, every page was another piece of the puzzle, and I was starting to see the whole ugly picture. Camila had grown reckless over the years, too sure of herself, too convinced I'd never look twice at what she was doing. I found unfiled receipts, hundreds of them, tucked away in folders she had not touched since the early days of Rotis Interiors. Little things at first, like payments to vendors that did not exist, expenses listed twice on different dates. Then it got bigger, backdated invoices for projects that never happened, money shuffled to shell companies with names I did not recognize. I leaned back on the couch, rubbing my face, trying to process it. She had been moving cash around, hiding it, and I had been too busy keeping her books straight to notice. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitant, then I typed one of the company names into a search. Nothing came up. No website, no address, just a dead end. That was when I knew I was on to something real. I kept going, night after night, the house silent except for the soft hum of the laptop and the occasional creak of the floorboards. Noah had come through with some old passwords, stuff Camila had not changed in years, and that opened the floodgates. Bank statements, emails, account logs I had not seen since I stopped handling the day-to-day admin. I found offshore transfers, small at first, then bigger, thousands of dollars slipping out of Rotis Interiors into accounts I could not trace. My heart pounded as I copied everything onto a new drive, my hands steady even though my mind was racing. This was not just about her cheating me out of the divorce. This was fraud, maybe worse. I thought about all those early investors, the ones who believed in her, the ones she'd pushed out once the business took off. I'd met them, shaken their hands, promised them she'd do right by them. Had she screwed them over too? Then I found something that stopped me cold. Payments to Elliot Rise. I knew that name. He was her consultant, the guy she'd started mentioning a couple of years back, always with a little smile I did not like. I'd seen him at a gala once. Tall, slick, too friendly with her, his hand lingering on her arm while I stood across the room, pouring drinks. The payments started small, a few hundred here and there labeled consulting fees, but they grew. 5,000, 10,000, all funneled through Rotis Interiors like it was legit. I stared at the screen, my jaw tight, feeling the sting of it hit me all over again. Not just her boyfriend, but her paid boyfriend, funded with money I'd helped her make. I wanted to smash something, to yell, to storm out and confront her right then, but I did not. I took a deep breath, saved the file, and kept going. Anger was not enough anymore. I needed strategy. The folder I was building grew thicker every night, digital at first, then printed pages I stacked in a locked drawer. I cross-checked dates, matched payments to projects, and dug into every corner of the business I could reach. I found more: fake charitable write-offs, donations to groups that did not exist, all logged as tax deductions. She had siphoned hundreds of thousands over the years, pocketing it while I was balancing her spreadsheets, thinking I was helping us build a future. My hand shook as I printed the last batch, the printer whirring in the quiet house. I was not just fighting for my half of the divorce anymore. I was holding proof that she had broken laws, hurt people, lied to everyone. Justice was not a vague hope now. It was a real thing sitting in that stack of paper. I met Zaire at the coffee shop the next day, sliding a few key pages across the table. He whistled low, flipping through them, his eyes sharp. "This is heavy," he said, glancing up at me. "You sure you want to go this far?" I nodded, my voice firm. She does not get to walk away clean. He did not argue, just told me to keep it quiet, keep it safe, and he'd help me figure out what was admissible. Noah called later, his voice tense. "I've got more account logs from 3 years back. You're not going to like it." He emailed me the files, and I spent another night connecting dots, my coffee going cold again. Every new piece made the picture clearer. Camila had not just betrayed me. She had built her success on a house of cards, and I was about to pull it down. The courtroom felt different that day, heavier somehow, like the air itself knew something big was about to happen. I sat at my table, my hands resting on the smooth wood, my folder in front of me like a loaded gun I'd finally get to fire. Across the room, Camila perched in her chair, her posture stiff, her eyes flicking between me and the judge. Griffin Leary sat beside her, his usual smirk dialed back to something tighter, less sure. The divorce hearing had been dragging on for weeks, but this was it. The final moment, the one I'd been building towards since that morning she handed me those papers. My attorney, Delilah Chin, gave me a small nod from her seat next to me, her calm confidence steadying my nerves. I'd handed her the folder days ago, and she'd told me, "This changes everything. Just wait for the right time." That time was now. The judge shuffled his papers, his glasses perched low on his nose, and looked up at us. "We're here to finalize the division of assets," he said, his voice dry and procedural. "Any last submissions before I rule?" Griffin stood, smoothing his tie, ready to launch into some polished speech about why Camila deserved it all. The house, the business, every dime. But before he could get a word out, I raised my hand. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady, even though my heart was hammering. "I have something to submit." The judge nodded, curious, and I slid the folder across the table to the bailiff, who carried it up to the bench. Camila's head snapped toward me, her eyes narrowing, but I kept my gaze on the judge. This was my moment, and I was not going to let her stare me down. He opened the folder, his fingers moving slowly at first, then pausing as he read. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear your own breathing, and I watched his expression shift. His brows furrowed, his mouth tightened. I knew what he was seeing: the tax evasion records, the investor fraud, the fake charitable write-offs I'd spent nights uncovering, pages of bank statements showing offshore transfers, invoices for shell companies, payments to Elliot Reyes labeled as consulting when they were anything but. I'd laid it all out: dates, amounts, proof she'd siphoned hundreds of thousands from Rodas Interiors into her own pockets. My hands stayed clasped in front of me, but inside I was buzzing, every nerve alive with the weight of what I'd done. This was not just about me anymore. It was about showing who she really was. Griffin shifted in his seat, his fingers tapping the table, his face tightening as the judge kept reading. Camila leaned toward him, whispering something sharp and fast, but he shook his head, his eyes locked on that folder like it was a bomb about to go off. And it was. I'd made sure every piece was airtight. Zaire had checked the legal angles, Noah had pulled the digital trails, and I'd connected it all. The judge flipped another page, then another, his silence stretching out until it felt like the whole room was holding its breath. Finally, he set the folder down, his hands resting on it, and looked up at Camila's side of the room. "Ms. Rodas," he said, his voice low and serious. "These are serious allegations. My chest tightened, but I did not move, did not flinch. Let the evidence talk. I did not need to say a word. Griffin shot to his feet, his voice louder than it needed to be. Your Honor, this is irrelevant to the divorce proceedings. This is a stunt, a desperate attempt to. The judge cut him off with a raised hand, his eyes sharp. Sit down, counselor. I'll decide what's relevant. Griffin sank back into his chair, his face red, and I caught the smallest tremble in Camila's hands as she clasped them in her lap. She was not smirking now. She was not even looking at me, just staring straight ahead, her jaw tight, her skin pale. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment settle over me like a wave. For months, I'd been the one on the ropes, the guy she thought she could toss aside with nothing. But now, she was the one squirming, and I was the one holding the cards. The judge cleared his throat, flipping back to the first page of the folder, and started asking questions, slow, deliberate ones directed at Camila's team. Can you explain these transfers to an account in the Cayman Islands dated 3 years ago? He asked. Griffin stumbled over his words, something about business expenses, but the judge was not buying it. And these payments to Mr. Reyes, what consulting services did he provide exactly? Camila's voice broke in, sharp and shaky. That's private. This doesn't belong here. But the judge did not let up, his tone growing harder with every question. I sat there, silent, watching it unfold, feeling the shift in the room. Delilah leaned toward me, her voice a whisper. You did it. They're rattled. I nodded, barely, keeping my eyes on the judge. This was not about gloating. It was about justice. And it was finally happening. By the time he called a recess, the air was thick with tension, and Camila's team was scrambling. Griffin gathered his papers, his movements jerky, while Camila shot me a look of pure venom, her eyes blazing with something I had not seen in her before, fear or fury or both. I met her gaze, calm and steady, and did not look away until she turned back to Griffin, her whispers sharp and urgent. The bailiff ushered us out, and I stood, my legs steady even though my pulse was still racing. Delilah clapped me on the shoulder as we walked into the hallway. That folder is a game changer, she said. They didn't see it coming. I nodded, feeling the weight of it all, the nights of digging, the years of being invisible finally paying off. Camila thought she had won before the fight even started. She was wrong. That night, after the courtroom showdown, I was back in the house, pacing the living room, the folder still burning a hole in my mind. The TV flickered in the background, some late-night news I was not really watching, but the quiet felt too heavy to sit in alone. My phone sat on the coffee table, dark and silent, until it buzzed hard against the wood, jolting me out of my thoughts. Unknown number. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen, then picked it up. Hello, I said, my voice rough from hours of not talking. There was a pause, then a deep voice came through, low and raspy, like it was trying to hide itself. Back off, it said. No hello, no explanation, just those 2 words, sharp and cold. My stomach twisted, but I kept my tone steady. Who is this? Another pause, longer this time, then a click. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart thudding, wondering if I had imagined it. But I had not. Someone was scared enough to call me in the middle of the night. The next morning, Delilah's name lit up my screen before I had even poured my coffee. Camila's team filed a motion, she said, her voice brisk and calm. They want to settle. Full offer, house included. Some cash, too. I leaned against the kitchen counter, the mug warm in my hands, and let that sink in. A settlement. After everything, the folder, the evidence, the judge's questions, they were waving a white flag, but it did not feel like victory. It felt like a bribe, a desperate grab to shut me up before I pushed harder. They're scared, Delilah added. That folder hit a nerve. I nodded, even though she could not see me, my mind already spinning. What do you think? I asked. She did not hesitate. We've got them on the ropes. If you want more, we keep going. I set the mug down, staring out the window at the empty street. More. I was not done. Not yet. Then things started getting weird. Delilah called again that afternoon, her tone tighter this time. My office got broken into last night, she said. Files tossed. Nothing big taken, just a mess. Cops think it's random, but she did not finish, and she did not need to. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Random did not fit. Not after that call. Not after the settlement push. Later that day, I tried logging into my bank account. Frozen solid. No explanation, just a contact us message blinking on the screen. I spent an hour on hold with the bank, my jaw tight, until they unfroze it, muttering something about a security flag. Coincidence? Maybe. But then Zaire texted me, his words short and clipped. Guy in a black car followed me home. Be careful. My hands went cold as I read it, the pieces clicking together too fast. Camila was not just rattled anymore. She was panicking, and someone was acting on it. I sat on the couch that night, the house dark except for the glow of my laptop, trying to make sense of it all. The folder had cracked something open, something bigger than I had expected. And now the pushback was real. Phone calls, break-ins, frozen accounts. I was not scared. Not exactly. But I was alert, every creak of the house making me glance toward the windows. Then my email pinged. A new message from an address I did not know, no name, just numbers and letters mashed together. The subject line stopped me cold. Check the attachments before it's too late. My pulse kicked up, and I clicked it, half expecting a virus or a scam. Instead, it was photos, grainy but clear enough. Camila and Griffin at a cafe, heads bent close, and a woman I did not recognize sitting across from them. Sharp suit, dark hair, a notepad in her hand. The timestamp on the images was from 2 days ago. I zoomed in, my eyes narrowing, trying to place her. Something about her felt off, too stiff, too focused. I forwarded the email to Noah with a quick note. Who's the woman? He got back to me in 20 minutes, his reply short. Working on it. Give me a day. I leaned back, staring at the screen, the photos still open. Whoever sent this wanted me to see it, wanted me to know Camila was scrambling. But why? Was it a warning, a threat, or something else? I could not sleep after that. Kept the lights on, kept checking the locks, my mind running circles around what I had stirred up. The settlement offer sat in my inbox, too, forwarded by Delilah, but I did not touch it. This was not about money anymore. It was about the truth, and I was too close to back off now. The next day, Noah called, his voice low and quick. That woman, Special Agent Thea Morgan, FBI Financial Crimes. I dug into some public records. Rhodes Interiors is on their radar. Money laundering, maybe more. My breath caught, the phone heavy in my hand. FBI. Suddenly, the break-in, the call, the tale on Zaire, it all made sense. Camila was not just fighting me. She was fighting something way bigger, and I had accidentally stepped right into it. What do I do? I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Noah did not sugarcoat it. Keep your head down, but don't stop. They're watching her, not you yet. I hung up, my hand shaky, and looked at the photos again. Camila's face in the cafe, tense and sharp, told me everything. She was cornered, and I was the one holding the match. The house felt like a cage that week, every shadow sharper, every noise louder. After that anonymous email dropped those photos in my lap, I kept them open on my laptop, staring at Camila and Griffin, huddled with Special Agent Thea Morgan, the FBI's financial crimes expert, in some tucked-away cafe. My coffee sat cold on the table, untouched, as I tried to wrap my head around it. Rhodes Interiors was not just a messy divorce battle anymore. It was a federal investigation, and I had stumbled right into the middle of it. My phone buzzed every few hours, texts from Zaire checking in, updates from Noah digging deeper, Delilah keeping me posted. But I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched too. The late-night call, the break-in at Delilah's office, my bank account freezing. It was not random. Camila was desperate, and desperation made people dangerous. But I was not backing down. Not now. Not when I was this close to seeing it all unravel. I met Delilah at her office a few days later, stepping over the mess the break-in had left. Papers still scattered, a cracked picture frame leaning against the wall. She handed me a sealed file, her eyes steady but serious. This came from a source I trust, she said, tapping it with her finger. Open it when you're alone. I nodded, tucking it under my arm, my stomach tightening. Back home, I locked the door, pulled the curtains, and sat at the kitchen table, the file staring back at me. My hands hesitated, then ripped it open. Inside was an affidavit signed by Kay Duran, Griffin's junior associate. I had met her once, a quiet girl with nervous hands, always trailing behind him at hearings. Now she was a whistleblower, and her words hit like a hammer. She laid it all out. Camila faking bids to overcharge clients, manipulating contracts, funneling kickbacks to big corporate contractors. Worse, Griffin knew. He'd helped cover it up, signing off on the lies. My breath caught as I read, the pages shaking in my hands. This was the smoking gun, and it was not just about the divorce anymore. It was criminal. I leaned back in the chair, the kitchen dark except for the glow of the lamp overhead, my mind racing. Kay's affidavit tied everything together. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, the payments to Elliot Reyes. Camila had built Rhodes Interiors into a front, a shiny mask for something dirty, and I'd been too busy playing the loyal husband to see it. But now I saw. The FBI was circling, Morgan's presence in those photos proof they were closing in. Delilah had confirmed it over the phone that morning. The feds are watching her company. Money laundering through design contracts. Your folder probably tipped them off. I did not know if I had started this or just sped it up, but either way, I was in it now. The threats, the call, the break-in were not just Camila's panic. They were her trying to plug a leak that was already flooding. My phone buzzed again as I sat there, another unknown number. I picked it up, my voice low. Yeah. A text popped up instead of a voice. You don't want to be part of this. My jaw tightened, and I typed back, too late. No reply came, but I did not expect one. I set the phone down, my hands steady now, the affidavit still open in front of me. Whoever was texting, whoever had tailed Zaire, thought they could scare me off. They did not know me, not the real me. The guy who had spent years building something only to watch it get stolen. I was not the silent husband anymore. I was the guy with proof, the guy who had accidentally kicked over a hornet's nest, and I was not running from it. I called Noah that night, my voice quiet but firm. You still digging? He sighed, the sound crackling through the line. Yeah, found more encrypted emails between Camila and some guy named Jonas Vick. Took me hours to crack, but it's shady. Offshore accounts, coded transfers. I'll send it over. My heart picked up. Jonas Vick. I did not know the name, but it felt heavy, like another piece I had not seen yet. Thanks, I said. Keep it safe. He laughed, short and dry. You too, man. This is getting wild. Wald did not cover it. When the files hit my inbox, I skimmed them. Dates, amounts, cryptic messages about cleaning the books. It was more fuel, more ammo, and I added it to the growing pile. The affidavit, the photos, Noah's finds. It was a mountain now, and Camila was standing at the bottom about to get buried. I did not sleep much that night, the house creaking around me, my mind too full to rest. The FBI angle changed everything. The Morgan was not meeting Camila to chat about interior design. She was hunting, and I had handed her a map with that folder in court. But I was not just a bystander anymore. The threats kept coming, subtle but real, and I knew Camila's team was scrambling. Griffin's name on that affidavit meant he was sinking too. Disbarment at best, jail at worst. I paced the living room, the photos and files spread out like a war plan, and felt the shift inside me. This was not about fairness or getting my share. It was bigger, messier, a fight I had not signed up for but could not walk away from. I was standing at the edge of something huge, and all I could do was keep pushing forward, one step at a time. The days after that affidavit landed in my hands felt like walking through a storm. Everything moving fast, dark clouds closing in. But I kept my footing. I sat in the living room most nights, the lamp casting long shadows across the papers and files spread out on the coffee table, my laptop humming as I cross-checked every new piece Noah sent me. Kay Duran's words kept echoing in my head. Camila faking bids, Griffin signing off on kickbacks, the whole shiny facade of Rhodes Interiors crumbling under the weight of her lies. I had known she had screwed me over, but this was a machine, a calculated grind that chewed up clients, investors, even me, all to keep her pockets full. The FBI was in it now, Special Agent Thea Morgan's face from those cafe photos sticking in my mind, and I was starting to feel the heat too. The threats were not stopping, and they were not subtle anymore. It started with another text that week, late at night, while I was poring over Jonas Vic's encrypted emails. My phone buzzed, the screen lighting up the darkroom. You don't want to be part of this. Same message as before, same unknown number. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the reply button, but I did not type anything this time. Instead, I tossed the phone onto the couch and went back to the emails. Whoever was texting thought I would scare easy. They did not get it. I was already in too deep, and every new threat just made me dig harder. The next morning, Zaire called, his voice tight. That black car was back last night, parked across my street for an hour. I'm fine, but this ain't random. My stomach twisted, but I kept my tone calm. Lay low, I told him. We're close. He grunted agreement, and I hung up, feeling the weight settle heavier on my shoulders. Delilah met me at a diner that afternoon, her eyes scanning the room before she slid into the booth across from me. She looked tired, the break-in still nagging at her, but her voice was steady. Kay's affidavit is gold, she said, keeping it low. The FBI has it now, confirmed through a contact. They're building a case, and your folder gave them the push. I nodded, sipping my coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. What about the settlement? I asked. She smirked just a little. Still on the table, but it's a panic move. Camila's team knows the feds are sniffing around. They're hoping you'll take it and disappear. I set the mug down, my hands steady. Not happening, I said. This isn't about money anymore. She did not argue, just gave me a look that said she had known that all along. Back home, I kept working, the house quiet except for the rustle of papers and the occasional ping of my email. Noah's latest batch had more on Jonas Vic, some shady financial fixer with a trail of shell corporations stretching overseas. The emails tied him to Camila, vague but damning hints of cleaning up and moving assets. I added it to the pile, my mind racing. The affidavit had already blown the lid off, case spilling about fake bids and kickbacks, but this was the next layer, the deeper dirt. Griffin was in it too, his name popping up in the emails, and I could almost picture him sweating, his smug grin long gone. The FBI had the case now, Delilah said, and I wondered how much they'd already known before I handed that folder over. Then the threats ramped up again. I woke up one morning to find my car's windshield cracked, nothing stolen, just a spider web of glass like someone had taken a bat to it. No note, no witnesses, but I knew. I called Delilah, my voice low as I stood in the driveway staring at the damage. They're not stopping, I said. She did not sugarcoat it. They're scared, and scared people get stupid. Keep everything locked down, files, doors, all of it. I nodded to myself, the cold air biting at my hands, and went back inside. That night, another text. Last chance. I did not reply, just took a screenshot and sent it to Delilah and Noah. My hands did not shake anymore. Anger had turned into something colder, something focused. They could smash my car, tail my friends, send their cryptic messages, but I was not the one running out of moves. I met Zaire the next day at a park, away from prying eyes, the wind rustling the trees around us. He handed me a USB drive, his face tense. More account logs Noah pulled, stuff from 2 years back. Matches Kay's story. I took it, slipping it into my pocket. You okay? I asked. He shrugged, but his eyes darted to the parking lot. I'll live. Just don't like the shadows. I clapped his shoulder, grateful, and headed home to plug it in. The logs were a gold mine. Transactions mirroring the affidavit. Payments to contractors who had never worked a day. All signed off by Camila and Griffin. It was airtight, and I knew the feds would eat it up. But I was not done. I wanted every loose end tied, every secret dragged into the light. By the end of the week, I sat in the dark again, the pile of evidence towering on the table. The FBI was moving, Camila's team was cracking, and I was still here, the guy they'd underestimated. The threats kept coming, but they were noise now, desperate, flailing noise. I was not just fighting for me anymore. I was in the middle of something bigger, something that could take her down for good. And I was ready to see it through, no matter what they threw at me next. The final hearing crept up fast, and by the time I walked into that courtroom again, I felt like a man who had been running a marathon. tired, but too stubborn to stop. The air was thick with tension, the kind you feel in your bones, and I took my seat next to Delilah, my hands resting on the table, steady despite the storm inside me. Across the room, Camila sat rigid, her face drawn tight, like she had not slept in days. Griffin was beside her, his tie slightly crooked, his usual swagger replaced by a twitchy edge. The folder I'd submitted weeks ago had done its damage, cracked their armor, set the FBI sniffing, but I was not done. I'd spent every night since then building more, digging deeper, and now I had one last play. The judge banged his gavel, the sound sharpening the quiet room, and called us to order. "Closing statements," he said, his voice gruff. "Let's wrap this up." Griffin stood first, his hands smoothing his jacket, trying to pull himself together. He launched into a speech, polished, rehearsed, all about how Camila deserved the business, the house, everything, because she had built it from the ground up. His voice was loud, confident at first, but I caught the cracks, the way his eyes flicked to me, the slight stumble over his words. He was nervous, and he should have been. The settlement offer was still on the table, bumped up since the last hearing, a fat stack of cash, and the house dangled like bait to make me go away. Delilah had forwarded it to me days ago, and I had stared at it, tempted for half a second. Freedom, a clean break, no more fighting, but I had not come this far to cash out. I leaned forward as Griffin finished, my hands clasped, waiting my turn. The judge nodded at me. "Mr. Rodas." I stood slow and deliberate, feeling every eye in the room on me. "Your Honor," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I have one final file." I reached into my briefcase, my fingers brushing the edges of the new folder, thicker than the last, packed with everything Noah and Zaire had pulled since the affidavit. The courtroom went still, a hush falling over it like someone had hit mute. I handed it to the bailiff, who carried it up to the judge, and I watched Camila's face as he took it. Her eyes widened, her hands gripping the table, and I saw the panic flash across her, raw, unguarded. Griffin shot up, his voice sharp. "Objection, Your Honor. This is irrelevant, a delayed tactic." The judge did not even look at him, just raised a hand. "Sit down," he said, his tone hard enough to make Griffin drop back into his chair, his face red. The judge opened the folder, his glasses slipping down his nose as he started reading. I knew what was in there. Emails tying Camila to Jonas Vick, the financial fixer Noah had tracked, proof of shell corporations funneling money overseas, transactions that matched Kay's affidavit down to the dollar. I had spent nights piecing it together, cross-checking dates, connecting dots until my eyes burned. This was not just about Rhodes Interiors. It was international fraud, a web bigger than I had ever imagined. The judge's face darkened with every page, his fingers pausing, then flipping back to double-check. I stood there, my heart pounding, but my stance steady, letting the evidence do the talking. Camila whispered something to Griffin, her voice low and frantic, but he just shook his head, his hands clenched on the table. They were sinking, and they knew it. The room stayed quiet, the only sound the rustle of paper as the judge worked through the file. He stopped halfway, looked up at Camila, his eyes narrow. "Ms. Rodas," he said, his voice low and serious. "These documents suggest serious misconduct beyond the scope of this divorce. Can your counsel explain?" Griffin fumbled, standing again, his words tripping over each other. "Your Honor, this is unverified. It's not part of the proceedings." The judge cut him off, his voice like steel. "It's part of my courtroom now. Sit." Griffin sank back into his chair, his face pale, and I caught Camila's hands trembling in her lap. She turned to me then, her eyes wide, her voice a harsh whisper across the room. "You don't know what you've done." I met her gaze, unflinching, and smiled, just a small, tight curve of my lips. "I think I do," I said, loud enough for her to hear, soft enough to keep it between us. The judge kept reading, his expression growing grimmer, and I knew it was over, not just the hearing but her whole game. Delilah leaned toward me, her voice a murmur. "You've got her. This is the knockout." I nodded, barely moving, my eyes on the judge. He finished the last page, set the folder down, and rubbed his temples like it had given him a headache. "This court will recess," he said finally. I'm referring these documents to the proper authorities. We're done here. The gavel banged, and the room erupted. Griffin arguing with the bailiff, Camilla staring at the table, her face drained of color. I stood there, the noise washing over me, feeling the weight lift just a little. It was not about winning anymore. It was about ending it, about dragging every lie into the light. As we filed out, Delilah clapped me on the back, her grin sharp. You buried her, she said. I did not smile back, just nodded, my mind already spinning ahead. Camilla's whisper stuck with me. You don't know what you've done. And I wondered what she meant. Was it a threat, a plea, or just the last gasp of someone who had lost? I did not know yet, but I would find out. For now, I walked out of that courtroom, my head high, the folder's truth echoing behind me. She thought she could erase me. She was wrong. The week after the final hearing passed in a blur, like the world had sped up and left me standing still to catch my breath. Camilla's arrest hit the news 7 days later. Handcuffs, a grim-faced mugshot, Rhodes Interiors splashed across headlines as a suspected front for money laundering and fraud. I saw it on my phone, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, the steam curling up in the quiet morning light. Her assets were frozen. The business collapsed overnight, clients pulling out faster than the feds could seize files. Griffin got disbarred within days, his name tied to the affidavit and those emails, his career torched. Jonas Vick, the shadowy fixer, vanished. No trace, no word, like he had never existed. As for me, the judge's ruling came through. I got the house, a fair chunk of what was left of her accounts, and the satisfaction of knowing the truth had won. But it did not feel like a win, not the way I had expected. I stood in the living room that first night after the ruling, the house too big, too empty, every corner echoing with 15 years of a life that did not exist anymore. The furniture was still there, the couch we had picked out, the shelves I had built, but it felt like someone else's now. I had spent so long fighting, digging, proving I was not the nobody Camilla thought I was. And now it was over. The folder, the late nights, the threats, it had all led to this. Yet I did not know what this was. I packed a small bag that evening, just clothes, a toothbrush, some papers, and locked the door behind me. The house could wait. I needed air, space, something new. I drove north, no real plan, just the hum of the road and the weight lifting off my chest with every mile. Pine Haven was where I landed, a quiet coastal town, all salt air and gray waves, far enough from the city to feel like a different world. The first morning there, I woke up in a rented cabin, the sound of the ocean creeping through the cracked window. No phone buzzing, no files to pore over, just the steady crash of water on rocks. I walked down to the beach, my shoes sinking into the sand, the wind tugging at my jacket. For the first time in years, I did not have to be anywhere, did not have to fix anything. I sat on a piece of driftwood, watching the tide roll in, and let my mind wander. Camilla's face flashed through it, her smirk in court, her panic at the end. But it did not sting anymore. She had lost everything, the business, the money, her freedom. I had walked away with more than she had ever meant to give me. But it was not about that. It was about me, finally stepping out of her shadow and into something of my own. The days in Pine Haven stretched out slow and simple. I grabbed coffee at a little shop downtown, the barista nodding like I had always been there. I walked the shore, picking up shells or just staring at the horizon, letting the salt air clear my head. The settlement money hit my account midweek, enough to start over, not enough to change the world, and I did not touch it yet. I did not need to. The house back home was mine to sell or keep, but I was not ready to decide. For now, this was enough. A bed, a roof, the sound of waves. I had spent so long chasing justice, building that case, that I had forgotten what it felt like to just breathe. Here, I remembered. One night, I sat on the cabin's porch with a beer, the sky dark and dotted with stars. My phone sat inside, off since I arrived, and I did not miss it. Zaire had texted before I left. You good? I had replied, yeah, meaning it. Delilah called too, her voice sharp with pride. You took her down, you know that? I smiled, tired but real. We did, I said. Because it was not just me. Zaire, Noah, Delilah, even Kay. They had all had a hand in it. Now they were back there, and I was here, alone in a way that did not feel lonely. I tipped the bottle back, the cold fizz hitting my throat, and thought about the last 15 years. I had been her ghost, quiet, steady, invisible, pouring myself into her dreams until mine faded. Now they were gone, reduced to evidence in a courtroom, and I was still standing. The next day, I walked into town, the streets quiet except for a few locals nodding hello. I stopped at a hardware store, bought a cheap fishing rod on impulse, figuring I'd try something new. Back at the beach, I cast the line out, the waves swallowing it, and waited. Nothing bit, but I did not care. It was not about the fish. It was about the doing, the being, the space to figure out who I was without her. The sun dipped low, painting the water gold, and I reeled in the line, my hands steady. No revenge fantasies played in my head, no gloating over her arrest. That was done. This was mine, my time, my choice, my life. By the end of the week, I knew I would stay in Pine Haven a while longer. The cabin was cheap, the air was clean, and the noise in my head was finally quiet. I was not celebrating, was not mourning, just living, one day at a time. I had been her husband, her backbone, her ghost. But now, I was just me, and for the first time in years, that was enough. The ocean rolled on, endless and steady, and I watched it, feeling like a man who had finally walked away, not from her, but towards something new.